The 2024 NFL Draft is full of wide receiver talent. It is one of the more deep and talented wide receiver classes that I have seen in a long time. We also have a generational type wide receiver at the top of this draft as well. Let's dive right into my top 10 wide receiver prospects in the 2024 NFL Draft. Still certainly subject to change, but starting with number 10, we have Jalen Polk, the wide receiver out of Washington. He is not their number one wide receiver. We will get to that guy later, but Polk is 6'2", 204 pounds. Just in his third year, he's still a super young player, and he's got a lot of the things that you look for in a really solid wide receiver prospect. He's got good size and speed combination, and I definitely think that he has shown some really nice traits, including a really strong release package. He's shown that he can win off the line of scrimmage, even against press coverage. He has the ability to use good footwork, use his hands, and really be able to get past defensive backs in the press coverage stance. He also has good contested catch ability. He's shown he can track the ball pretty well, win through contested catches, win through contact as well. And especially when he gets his momentum going, he can use a lot of the physical traits that he has to really be a decent run after catch type of player. He's not necessarily the most nuanced or most complete player when it comes to the route running side of things, or, he does sometimes have a couple of concentration drops here and there. There's definitely some things that he needs to clean up, and there's certainly a chance that he does return to Washington and look to improve on his draft stock. But I really like what he's done kind of as the number 2 option in a very, very talented wide receiver room. He's had 55 catches, 943 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's definitely taken over certain games against Cal. He really played very well. So I definitely think he's shown a lot of traits to potentially be a wide receiver 2, most likely in the NFL. But I like what Polk could be for a team that drafts him in the second round. At number 9, we have Odunze Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas. Once again, part of a great tandem of wide receivers that'll likely go pretty early in this draft, Xavier Worthy being the other. Mitchell transferred from Georgia, where he had a lot of success, and then ultimately, wanted to go play with Quinn Ewers, be closer to home, and I certainly respect that decision. He's a very talented player. He's 6'4", 196 pounds. He is tall, but he is a little bit slender. You would maybe hope that he would be able to put on a couple of pounds in an NFL weight room, but he definitely got a lot of the traits that you look for when you look at just a raw athlete with a lot of the traits that make a wide receiver really special: the length, the size, the speed. He's got that rare combination, and he's definitely shown that he can use it in contested catch situations. There's certain plays where he goes up against a defensive back and they're doing everything they can to claw that ball away from him, and they just can't do it because he's just that dominant when it comes to his physical traits. I also think his route running, while maybe not the most nuanced, he does do a good job sometimes, using his size and his speed combination to push off at the catch point. He does it in a way that likely isn't going to get called, and I do think that allows him to create some decent separation for himself. I do think he has pretty good hands and a decent release package to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. He's definitely shown he can win at all 3 levels of the field and is a big player for that Texas program. Had 45 catches, 704 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Had a streak of multiple games in a row of scoring a touchdown, so he's certainly continuing to put together that consistency as well. I do think that his yak ability is something that should be a little bit better for the size and speed combination of what he has as a player. You'd like him to fight through that first tackle a little bit more often, make a man miss, and be able to get downfield. But really, overall, I think A.D. Mitchell has a very good, complete game. I think that he has wide receiver 1 potential, likely right now as a wide receiver 2. Would be a really solid second-round pick for a team that wants a nice downfield complement. I think Mitchell could absolutely provide that and be that wide receiver 2 in a vertical offense in the NFL. At number 8, we have Troy Franklin, the wide receiver out of Oregon, a junior, 6'3", 187 pounds. He is a very slender player. That is something that NFL teams will definitely want him to potentially put on a little bit more weight. Obviously, you can survive at 187 pounds in the NFL, but it's just something that you'd feel much better if he was around that 195, 200 range for his size. But he's got some great traits working with Bo Nix. You know, he has really helped Nix elevate his game and become a Heisman-level candidate, and I think Franklin deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do this year. Franklin has 77 catches, 1,349 yards, and 14 touchdowns so far this year. Has really shown some great traits. He definitely has that kind of lanky speed speed, that build-up speed in particular, that you can definitely see on those downfield routes. And I think that really is amplified by his great ability to get off the line of scrimmage. He uses his footwork very effectively. He uses hard fakes and gets the defensive back in really compromising situations, and that allows him to really use his speed and route running prowess to get a lot of separation and create lots of open throwing windows for his quarterback. He's got reliable hands. I thought he was a pretty good run blocker for his size as well. You definitely think that, potentially he could be a little bit better in contested catch situations. The flashes are absolutely there, but he's just not going to outmuscle a ton of guys downfield. He's more of that traditional deep threat where you create a lot of separation, get open, and be a big downfield target for your quarterback. And I think he's done that at a very high level for Bo Nix and for Oregon's offense this year. I do have a true second round grade on him. I definitely think he could be a great complement to number 2 wide receiver in the NFL and has shown a lot of very, very desirable traits as well. Moving into perhaps my biggest surprise of my film evaluations, Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU, really kind of his first year as a true starter for LSU, and he exploded. Now, you certainly have to understand that he wasn't always going against the best corners that the other team had, because LSU has an elite level wide receiver as well that we'll talk about in a minute, but Brian Thomas Jr. absolutely took advantage of the matchups in front of him. He is 6'4", 205 pounds, is very well built, was a very highly recruited player as well. This year, 60 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 15 touchdowns. He is a true playmaker, has just made plays all year for LSU and for Jaden Daniels. You've got the elite traits that you look for in a potential wide receiver 1 type prospect. I was also very impressed by how advanced some of the more, I would say, technical parts of wide receiver are. His release in particular is really good. It's one of the best in the class. He's just so good at making the corner commit and making a quick jab step, cutting the other way, using his physicality and his size and his length. His arms are super long, so he can use that to swat off defenders that are trying to press him at the line of scrimmage. I think he does a great job of doing that. He's very good after the catch as well. He's tough to bring down because he's so tall, he's so long, he's so dynamic. He definitely can make plays after the catch. You look at that Florida State game, towards the very end of the game, he is able to break off a huge play, make a couple of guys miss, and get into the end zone. That's the kind of thing that you are really excited to see. What also makes you really excited is his contested catch ability. He's shown that he can win jump balls. You can throw it up to him, and you can trust him to go and make plays. And that is something that is really exciting to see for Brian Thomas Jr. He does have some concentration drops, and that's something he does need to clean up. He's got to be a little bit more nuanced when it comes to his route running, being able to break off really effectively at the stem of the route, use those subtle push-offs, use the head fakes and some of the more advanced route running technique type of things to get wide open for your quarterback and create that extra separation. I think he can still improve there, but the traits are absolutely there to become a potential wide receiver 1. If Thomas does declare, I think he is definitely going to be in that first or second round conversation. Somebody I think will be a riser in this draft. At number 6, we have Xavier Legette, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. He is 6'3", 227 pounds. He is absolutely juiced up and definitely looks like a running back on the field with just how big and powerful he is. The traits are absolutely there. He reminds me a lot of DK Metcalf, just that huge guy that is super explosive and just a rare athlete for his size. Legette is the same type of player. You see him make a catch and then he just turns on the jets and you wonder where on earth that came from a guy that big. He has a pretty good release package as well. He can use his physicality and his size to get off the line of scrimmage, and there's some decent nuance there. What's really, really exciting about Legette is his contested catch ability. He's shown that he can go up, track the ball really effectively in the air, high point it, and come down with it even through contact. And, that's what separates him from some of those other guys that are very traits-based and, maybe are just kind of that contested catch, jump ball type of guy. He has both the yak ability, the ability to create once the ball is in his hands, but he can also be a huge downfield target and a big play threat for a lot of teams as well. I definitely think there's still room for improvement when it comes to his route tree. It's not super advanced. They don't ask him to do a ton of things. Most of it is quick routes that allow him to get into space and catch the ball with a lot of room to run, or deep balls where he can go jump and track that ball downfield. And so I do think he is going to have to be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit better at creating separation, being a true route technician, and getting open on a more consistent basis. But I think at the very least, Legette is going to be a special gadget type of player where you can use him in a variety of different formations, a variety of different concepts where you're either just sending him downfield and throwing it up to him or getting the ball in his hand and letting him make a play. So I think there's still tons of value to that, even if he can't add a ton to his more technical side of route running and things like that. But if he can hit his potential, this sky is the absolute limit for Xavier Legette. Once again, I think DK Metcalf is a very good comparison for what he could potentially be in the NFL, and I definitely think he could be that elite wide receiver 1 if everything goes well. At number 5, we have Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. At 6'1", 206 pounds, doesn't necessarily have the most elite physical traits. He is much more of a technician, somebody that wins because of his understanding of where to attack zones, where to settle down, how to attack a man defender, and how to create that separation. That route running and his hands are really, really impressive. He's somebody that can make a lot of body adjustments in the air as he's going to adjust for that ball and make the catch. He's so good at using head fakes and just creating conflict in the mind of the defender right as he's going through that route break. They just don't know which way he's going to go. He's particularly effective in the slot. I definitely think he can be a Z receiver in the NFL as well, an outside receiver, but I definitely think that he's going to be most effective in the slot where you can utilize a lot of two-way goes, use his explosiveness, and use some of that real route running savviness that really will put him in a lot of space and put defenders in major conflict. He has a great route tree. He's asked to run a lot of different routes at Ohio State, and he didn't necessarily have the most productive year. He was dealing with, I think, admittedly not great quarterback play with Kyle McCord, and then he also was dealing with some injuries, but still put up 35 catches for 452 yards and 4 touchdowns so far this year. I do think the contested catchability is there in flashes. It's not the most consistent thing. They don't ask him to do it all the time, but he certainly has shown that he can do it when asked, and I think he's a very good yak weapon as well. They use him as a punt returner because he's very good at seeing lanes, reading blocks, and being able to make defenders miss. So I definitely think he can be used in the gadget game as well. Get him on some quick screens, just put him in space, and that will allow him to be a great wide receiver prospect as well. I do think that his run blocking is particularly terrible. Not that that plays a major part in my gradings for these wide receivers, but I just was very unimpressed with his run blocking. Overall, very, very good wide receiver prospect. I think can be used in a lot of different ways. Maybe doesn't have the most elite traits, but he has pretty much all of the technical skills that you look for in a wide receiver. That brings us to number 4, and I think number 2 through 4 is particularly difficult in this class. There are 3 guys that are below our number 1 player that are just so close, and I think you can make the case for any of them to be wide receiver 2 in this class. I have Keon Coleman at number 4 from Florida State. This guy is just gigantic. He's 6'4", 215 pounds, absolutely built like your ideal X wide receiver in the NFL, and the traits absolutely match it up. He's got pretty good speed for that size. He can separate decently well against somebody of his size. It is impressive what he can do. Really where he wins is his contested catchability. He even earned bonus points on that category just because of how dominant he truly was in those situations. You see him go up with one hand, just the body control, the ability to high point the ball, understand where and when to jump and attack that football is so impressive for Keon Coleman. He's pretty good after the catch. If you put the ball in his hand, he definitely can make a play. I was impressed by his release package as well. I think for somebody that big, being able to use footwork, head fakes, his physicality at the line of scrimmage is very important because a lot of times you try to press those X receivers that are just so physically dominant downfield. If you can get off of that like Keon Coleman can, that is a huge advantage. I do think he has a little bit more limited route tree. Wasn't asked to run a ton of different advanced concepts or advanced routes at Florida State, but he is very, very good for his size. His movement skills, his explosiveness are very impressive. And then he has all of the things that come with being a big wide receiver, that contested catchability, the ability to win downfield and be a big play target. Keon Coleman is definitely somebody that could be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Had 46 catches, 639 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Really impressive, reception to touchdown ratio there. Definitely a first round player. I think you can make the argument he's a top 10 player for most wide receiver classes, he would be the wide receiver 1 or 2. It's just so strong at the top, which brings us to number 3. It's going to be Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. He's 6'3", 215 pounds, and I love what Rome Odunze has done at Washington with Michael Penix this year. Their chemistry is just so unmatched. It's so good. And Odunze has really everything that you look for in a really good wide receiver prospect. He reminds me a lot of T. Higgins as a Bengals fan. He has really good height, and he's well built at 215 pounds as well. But his just understanding of where to attack defenses, his ability to be a really solid route runner even at that size, but his true calling card is that contested catch ability. He's so dominant on back shoulder fades, and his understanding of the timing of when to turn the body, contort it, and go up and make a catch. He's so good in those situations. And as we mentioned, a lot of that comes down to the timing with the quarterback. He just has the ability to understand, I can beat you deep, I can beat you on back shoulder fades, I can win across the middle. I'm a very good yak weapon as well. Odunze really doesn't have many things in his game that are a big concern to me. I think he's one of the safer wide receiver prospects I've seen. He just has really reliable hands. He has a really strong release package. He can win through contact both at the route break and off the line of scrimmage. He's got a pretty advanced route tree. They ask him to do a ton of different things. Maybe not the most advanced and most polished run blocker, but once again, if that's the biggest complaint you have with a wide receiver prospect, you're probably doing pretty good. And Odunze is just the complete package. I think he'd be a wide receiver 1 in almost every draft class. He's wide receiver 3 because we just have such good players. He has over 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns this year. The production, the traits, it all matches of being a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, and I definitely think worthy of a top 10 pick. At number 2, we have Malik Nabers, the wide receiver from LSU, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's a little bit smaller than some of the other guys. This is a relatively big wide receiver class. A lot of potential X wide receivers in the NFL. I think Nabers could play that role of an X receiver, but he's a little bit more of just that explosive playmaker that creates tons of separation. His separation and his ability to understand where to attack defenses, where to settle into zones, and how to beat players that are guarding him is just ridiculously impressive. He's very solid, just when it comes to pure traits. You look at his speed, his size, they're all wide receiver traits that you look for in the NFL. He is not super tall, but he can still win at contested catches. He's shown that he has great concentration, the ability to show late hands that make it really difficult for defenders to guard him deep downfield. But what makes him truly special, he's got a great release from that line of scrimmage, and then he just moves differently, whether it's with the ball in his hand or trying to get open on routes. He just has this smoothness and this explosiveness that allows him to create such ridiculous separation. And most of the time when he's making catches, it's not very contested because he's just that open. And he was running all over Alabama and Mississippi State, great defenses with great defensive backs. He's shown it in the SEC that he can create just loads of separation. Would be wide receiver 1 in almost every draft class. Such a great player. I have a top 10 grade on him. I definitely think you could take him to be your dominant number 1 wide receiver for a quarterback. I love what Malik Nabers can provide for an NFL team. But that brings us to number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr., the best wide receiver prospect I have ever scouted. In 2023, once again with a down season from his quarterback, 67 receptions, 1,211 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. And really, there's not anything to complain about with Marvin Harrison Jr. Your biggest complaint is maybe he's not the best when it comes to yards after catch. He does go down relatively easily on first contact, and that's probably the biggest gripe you have with him. You'd love to see him make a guy miss and be a little bit more effective in the open field. But when it comes to pretty much everything else in the wide receiver traits department, he's got it. He's got the size. He's got the speed. For his size, he's incredibly athletic. He's so nuanced when it comes to his route running. His dad, one of the best route runners of all time, and you can certainly see it based on his just understanding of where to attack defenses, where to settle in the open zones, how to attack the leverage of the defender, and then just break in the other direction. Has such a good release from the line of scrimmage, can win contested balls very effectively. He's shown he can do it many times over, has great hands. I just think that he can do everything that you look for in a wide receiver prospect, runs every route in the book. He's a really solid run blocker as well. I was very impressed by what he does in the running game. And there's just not many bad things to say about Marvin Harrison. He's not a perfect prospect. Like I said, would love to see him break open a little bit more in the open field and be able to make that happen. But really, he has it all. He is going to probably end up as the number 1 player on my draft board, and I think a lot of people will be in the same boat as well. Let me know what you think of my top 10 wide receivers list here. Who should be on the list? There were a couple guys that didn't make the cut. Xavier Worthy, Malachi Corley, some of those guys definitely were in the mix here, but I like these top 10 guys just a little bit more. Let me know what you think down below. If you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, hit the like button as well. Helps push this out to other NFL draft fans just like you. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.